Well, hello everyone and welcome to Geek Academy channel, and you've been asking for me to do a Lexington letter video and I've been listening. So this is exactly what we're gonna do today, and this is not gonna be my regular video, this is not gonna be a recap and only explanation. Since the Lexington letter is kind of a short one, I actually wanted to read it with you. Go through every passage and try to understand what kind of an insight and what kind of information it provides us. I think it's gonna be fun, but this is one of those videos that you need to prepare yourself something hot or something sweet to drink, maybe take some cookies and get ready to spend some quality time with Geek Academy. So if you're ready, let's dive in. So as you know or you didn't know, Lexington Letter was released a couple of years ago when season 1 was premiering, but as far as I know, a lot of people still kind of missed it, but it's very important in understanding what is going on in Lumen, in Severance, etc. So actually we're gonna read it today. As I told you, it's not gonna be very long. By the way, the book is available on Apple Books, on Apple Store, whatever. It's for free completely. I don't think it cost anything. I bought it a while ago and I don't remember, did I pay for it like $1 or it was completely free? Anyway, let's see what's going on here. In the book, there is a conversation and email sequence between our hero, our main hero, and some journalists. That's not really journalists. They're just basically, you know, fake. Not really fake, because I mean, I'm just angry at them, because you're gonna see why I'm angry at them. So we have a letter from Daria T to Jim M, and the letter says, "Hey Jim, I received a letter below from a severed employee at Lumen. I also scanned the employee handbook that she mentions in her letter here too, so that's attached. The whole thing seems pretty out there, but perhaps worth pursuing. What do you think?" This is Daria and this is the Topeka Star. Okay, by the way, Topeka sounds familiar. I think it was mentioned a couple of times in Severance, but I don't remember. Some of you who remembers, please write in the comments. So this is the letter that we got from Peg Kincaid. This is our main hero. Dear Miss Thorne, my name is Peg Kincaid. Until yesterday, I was an employee at Lumen Industries here in Topeka. So this is not our town, this is not Kirtown, this is a different place. I'm writing on behalf of myself and my friend Peggy K, who is now no longer with us. Maybe it's strange to call her my friend, but it's how I think of her, depending on how much you know about Lumen and what they do. Maybe you already know what I mean. Like, we know what you mean, but maybe this Daria girl don't. I choose to reach out to you because I've seen, among other things, your thorough coverage of the Dorner truck incident on November 3rd. I thought about going to the cops with what I'm about to tell you, but people say Lumen has a lot of connections with the police and city hall, and so I don't think they would believe me anyway. I'm not surprised. We know that powerful corporations usually have friends in places like that, in the governmental places, whether it's politicians, cops, or anything else, or maybe even journalists. Okay, so I hope you believe me. I really need someone to believe me. With that in mind, I'm going to try to give you the full story. Forgive me if I get a bit rambly. I tend to go on and on when I'm nervous, and she's nervous because she feels that somebody's following her and she's probably gonna be unalived very soon. And I'm really very nervous about this. Right now I'm staying in a motel because I can't shake the feeling that somebody has been watching me. The same black cars seem to always be parked next to mine, and for the last few weeks my mail has been all crumpled when I've gotten it at night. Like someone's digging through it. It all feels so off. So yes, I just want to get this all written down in case something happens. Something beyond what's already happened. Alright, here goes. As a bit of a background, I think in your field you call it color, up until about 2 years ago I was a school bus driver for Clover Elementary down off Route 2. I'd been there for about 12 years. I love my job, I love kids, even though I don't have any of my own. And I sincerely believe they like me too. At some point, the kids learned that I was the youngest driver on the school's payroll, even though I was already 50. Wow, that's a very old average age for a school bus driver. So they gave me the nickname Baby Driver, a reference to the beloved action film of the same name. So it kind of feels we're in the same universe. This is the movie that also been released a couple of years ago. So yeah, you probably have seen this movie. But despite this fun camaraderie and my relative youth, I'll confess I was starting to feel burnt out. My route had gotten longer, I had a few real misbehaviors, all that stuff. It all came to a boiling point one day in February. It was a cold day, the kind I used to call a booger freezer. funny by the way, to get a rise out of the kids until a fundamentalist mom heard about it and complained. I was near the end of my afternoon route when, through no fault of my own, my bus hit black ice. Also, the same thing happened with Gemma, so it kind of makes me think maybe it's somehow intentional. Can Lumen just be putting black ice everywhere? So people will, make more car accidents and they will get more people to work with. I know it's out there, it's completely far-fetched, but since Gemma also has been taken by ice, we know this from the book that was written by Rickon, and now this one too, almost being taken out. So to get a rise out of the kids, I pumped the brakes as per protocol, but our momentum kept us sliding, and for the first time in my career in child transport, I landed my rig in a ditch. All the kids screamed. I wanted to scream too, but you know how it is, gotta be the adult. Thank the good Lord no one was hurt, just shook up. But we were stuck for nearly 2 hours with the heat knocked out. The kids were crying, scared cold, asking for their mummies. We had 3 urination events, which in the low temperature proved a real issue. Finally another bus was able to come by and get my kids. I remained with the vehicle, again protocol, and listened to the radio to try to stay warm. I don't know, it made sense at the time. Now this is the part that, when I look back, still makes no squirm. While I was sitting there waiting for the tow, boogers freezing, I distinctly remember thinking to myself, fuck this job. I may have even said it out loud, I am not sure. Once again, like if you're gonna talk right now next to your phone and you're gonna say to yourself, I should move to, I don't know, Georgia, I should move to Georgia, I should move to Switzerland. I think Switzerland is an amazing country. Soon on Facebook you're gonna see some ads that basically provides you an opportunity to move to Switzerland, and this is a company that's gonna help you there. They are listening, we know that. So maybe Lumen, having its own tools and all of its capabilities, can actually listen to people when they're just driving the bus through the radio. While she was listening to the radio, she turned it on and it felt weird, like why would you turn on the radio to stay warm? But it kind of feels like an important detail here. But I either thought of it or said it, and right at that moment, as if it had heard me, this ad came on the radio. It was an employment recruiting ad, but they were weirdly vague about the job. A lot of flowery talk about making history. Once again, history theme of Lumen, like history lives inside of you whether you know it or not. This is a quote by Jamie Egan. And this Keir Egan dude was talking about, like, if a person is remembered, he is truly immortal or some shit like this. So a lot of flowery talk about making history and rethinking the notion of work. It was sort of tuning out until the end when they said the name of the company, Lumen Industries. I knew who they were. I'd been using their deodorant since puberty, but I didn't know they had a branch in Topeka. I remember thinking, well, that was weird. Anyway, 2 hours later, the tow truck finally came and yanked my rig from the ditch. I got home 5 hours later than usual with an angry voicemail from my supervisor accusing me of driving recklessly. I had this shit, like I would tell this boss to go fuck himself. I wasn't asking for a medal or anything, but a word of acknowledgement over the hell I'd just been through would have felt more appropriate than a chewing out. That night I told myself I needed to start looking for a new job. Exactly, this is not a job you want to be in. Like if you have been in danger, doesn't even matter if this was your fault or wasn't your fault, and your boss impulse is to chew you off instead of asking how are you, maybe you need some kind of a medical assistant, maybe this kind of a boss should go fuck himself, like 100% fuck himself. Anyway, I was off the next day and I went downtown to run a few errands. On the way home I passed what I realized must be the new Lumen site, which had been under construction for the past few months. It was a big building that looked almost like a mall. I thought back to when I'd heard their ad while shivering in that freezing bus. And even though I had ice cream in the trunk, I find myself turning into the parking lot. I parked and I went in. At first I figured no high-tech company would hire someone like me. I mean, I only got through a few semesters at Kansas State. By the way, Lumen is not only high-tech company. They have a lot of, they have office supplies, they have food, they have everything basically. But the nice Lumen lady who greeted me told me that didn't matter. She said that I could get a great office job, incredible benefits, manageable hours, and all I had to do was this tiny little procedure called severance. I'm guessing you know what that is. Well, I didn't, remember? This was a few years back and it took them longer than it probably should have to explain it to me. They told me that after a screening process, I'd have a small, totally painless chip inserted into my brain. That freaked me out for a bit, but they assured me it was easier than getting a cavity filled. Then they told me that the chip would make it so I wouldn't remember work. That was the real benefit here. I'd have absolutely no memory of work. Never. I just go into the office and the chip would turn on in my brain, activating my work self. My innie is what they called it. That person would do all the work. And then when I'd leave work, the chip would turn off and I'd be back and have the whole rest of my day ahead of me. No memory of work and 4 times the pay? Despite it being quite a drastic procedure, all that made it feel like, well, a no-brainer. Or, a half-brainer? Because of Severance? You get it? Sorry, my dad always hated it when I joked when I was nervous, but here we are. Once again, she reminds us that she is nervous because she is afraid of Lumen. She should be. So where was I? Right, back to Lumen, I got the procedure, I was severed, all that, and it was totally fine. They even gave me a really nice 4-cheese panini afterward because my procedure time slot butted up against the lunch hour. I thought, this is so great, what a great place to work. Once again, we've seen Lumen with the pineapple and now with the cheese, like they always have to do something corporate, like in their logic this is something nice. But it was kinda nice actually for him. I was wrong. Very, very wrong. But I wouldn't learn it for another 2 years. I started at Lumen the following Monday and settled into this nice day-to-day routine. I'd show up at work, swipe my fancy Lumen badge and then change out of my outdoor clothes and into some Lumen neutrals, as they call them, which means no labels, tags, patterns, no words at all on anything. Company policy. They don't even have the numbers on the watch. Lumen wanted a complete divide between innies and us people on the outside, aka the outies. No written word, no messages back and forth were allowed. All of that is what you sign up for when you get severed. In my orientation, they even talked about these code detectors built into the elevators that would sense written words. It was a fancy place. Then, after changing my clothes, I'd take the elevator down to the severed floor in the basement and then nothing. Sweet, sweet nothing. In the middle of the elevator ride, my severance chip would switch my consciousness over to my innie, this whole other personality with no memory of my life here in Topeka. She could walk and talk and all that, but didn't remember, say, my 3rd grade teacher's name, or me falling off a horse and breaking my arm when I was 8, or when my ex-husband told me he wanted a divorce. Lucky girl. She was me, but not me. So yeah, my innie would wake up and head to work doing whatever it is my innie did down there. Some desk job with data, I've been told. And meanwhile, the other half of the brain, that is me, would basically get to just take a nap for the day. At the end of the workday, I'd come to in that same elevator, maybe a little tired after what I assume was a hard days of work, but otherwise none the wiser for earning that paycheck. And that's how it went, day in and day out, for 2 years, until one particular Tuesday when I messed it all up. Or actually, we messed it all up. That Tuesday I got off work, in other words, I came to in that elevator and went to my locker. Nothing odd there, but then, as I was pulling on my jacket, I felt something in my pants pocket. A surprise, since we're not supposed to bring anything in or out. I pulled out a half sheet of typing paper, nearly folded into pocket size. Seeing that the upstairs security guard was busy watching soccer on his phone, I opened it up. Now at this point I need to back up again and give you more color, but I promise it's for a very important reason. My sister, Meryl, is only about 11 months older than me. We actually were born in the same year, funnily enough. We've since grown apart as time's gone by, but as kids we were really close. In fact, we were so close that we invented a secret language together, called Poglish. We'd write long letters to each other about what boys we liked or teachers we hated in Poglish, so no one else could understand. I say language, but actually all we did was replace each letter with a different symbol. A was a seahorse, B was a lightning ball, X was a pair of boobs, which got us in trouble once or twice, but not too often, because it's an uncommon letter and we were sneaky. Anyway, like I said, Meryl and I had grown apart over time and I hadn't thought about Poglish, let alone read or written it for more than 30 years. So on that Tuesday at Lumen, you can imagine my surprise when I unfolded the paper and found out it lined with rows of little seahorses, lightning bolts, and other distantly familiar symbols. There were even boobs in the second paragraph. I stood there baffled at how a full note in perfect Puglish had ended up in my pocket while I was down on the 7th floor. Keep in mind it was a couple of years before the events of our TV show, so maybe the code detectors were not that involved, in this situation, so maybe they didn't know how to detect that code. But I think right now Lumen will be able to detect anything. I took the note home and looked it over. It was strange how quickly my memory of our code came back to me, and I was able to read the message almost as if it had been in English. Understanding its contents proved a little harder. Dear Peggy K, I don't know what this language is or why it is in my head. It's been coming to me slowly over the past few weeks. I find myself writing at my desk. I thought if anybody would know what it was, maybe it would be you. I don't know if this will even pass the code detectors, but I felt I had to try. I know this is a breach in protocol. Please don't be angry with me. If you cannot tell, I am your innie. I live down here in the macro data refining department with my 3 co-workers. Always 4 in MDR, as far as we can see. Why always 4? Maybe because we have 4 tempers, but so far I'm not entirely sure why this is even a connection. I have often thought of you and what your life might be like out there, and why I exist in the first place. Why does one choose to get severed? Maybe this language isn't real and I'm writing nonsense, but if you can read this, I would love for you to write me back. I understand if that is not possible. I do not mean any harm. Sincerely, your innie, Peggy K. Okay, once again we get a confirmation that innies and outies are connected mentally, through psychological, some kind of a link. So, we have Irving, he was seeing the images of, black color and like the one that his outie uses in his drawings. And now we have another confirmation with Peggy K talking to her innie. Well, this knocked me on my ass, I'll be honest. I hadn't really given my innie too much thought before then. Like, I knew she was down there doing her thing, but part of what I loved so much about this whole Severance thing is that I didn't need to think about it. But then, there she was, Peggy, my innie, writing to me in Puglish. I stared at it for a long time. It also tripped me up because I hadn't been called Peggy since elementary school. I'd been told during training that my innie would be like a little kid, with little to no life experience, but I didn't think it'd be so obvious. I stared at that note for the rest of the night. I thought of her or me, or a different version of me, I guess, down there in the dark on the 7th floor, clearly desperate for more information. I was really torn about what to do. I loved my job, or what I knew about it, and I didn't want to mess that up. Writing messages to my innie was definitely against Lumen policy, there's no question about it. Was it possible a code invented by 2 grade schoolers could be enough to trick the detectors? Granted, it was a new technology, but still. To this day, a part of me wishes I'd done what I was supposed to. Call my Lumen supervisor, Mr. Alvarado, and report my innie's infraction. This is probably, an equivalent to Mr. Milchek. But sometimes, at the end of the day, I'd come out of the elevator feeling, I don't know, different than I'd ever felt before. Maybe a little giddy, or sometimes all wound up, or scared even. And it made me wonder, what were they doing down there with my body? If she came back scared, she was probably in the break room. So the next morning I decided to write her back, just this once, and ask her. She wrote back right away. I got a message in my pocket that next night. She told me she worked as a macro data refiner. When I asked her what that means, she told me it involved working on a computer, putting those special numbers into special bins, which made no sense to me. That's a job? And I'm making 4 times as much as when I was driving a bus? Once the floodgates were opened, I couldn't help myself. I wrote back to her more and more, asking follow-up questions. She responded with such a weird description that I had to write it down here. The best I've come up with is that the numbers make you feel things. It's not an individual number, but a whole cluster of them, and after a while they'll sort a thrope, a certain emotion at you. Sometimes it's joy or sadness or worry. Sometimes it's obvious, other times more subtle. Each type of number has its own designation, like the angry ones are called MA, this is abbreviature of malice. Once you've identified the numbers, you surround them with the arrow on your computer and into a bin they go. I want to take a moment, Miss Thor, and say that this sounded as nuts to me as it does to you. These numbers made her feel things. Peggy tried to help me out and describe it more, but the more details she'd go into, the more confused I got. I asked her if the numbers even ended. She told me yes, when you finish the file. I guess there's a whole wall of them on her computer screen, but eventually the wall runs out and all of the numbers have been sorted. And that's that, file completed. This is a very important information for my future video. What does MDR really do? Because since they can actually finish it, it also means something about, the chip and the innie psychology and how they create new people. Peggy told me that they get prizes when they finish the files, some weird stuff like a melon bar and something called a music dance experience and a waffle party. It all sounded pretty infantilizing to me, but I hope they at least get different types of syrups to go along with those waffles. Yeah, 4 different types of syrups to be accurate here. It wasn't always me drilling her though, she also asked me things too, and over again. I was beside myself with how much it felt like I was talking to a kid version of, well, myself. She wanted to know everything about outside life, like what it felt like to be drunk or asleep. I'd never thought of it before, but she'd never been asleep, because I do all that on the outside. Or to fall in love, that one was a toughie. To answer, just ask my ex-husband. Or to have someone you love die. It was strange to see how the procedure filtered her knowledge. She knew what beer was, but couldn't name a specific brand. She knew she lived in America, but couldn't draw a map of it to save her life. She knew that movies exist, but not who David Niven was, despite him being by far my longest standing crush. It was like she'd seen only the vexed shape of the world through a foggy window. She asked me what snow felt like. I sat on that one for a while and finally came up with holding a cold cotton shirt that melts in your hands. She asked me what snow felt like. I sat on that one for a while and finally came up with holding a cold cotton shirt that melts in your hands. And if I knew how to ride a bike. I do, not very well, but I don't tip over either. And if I ever regretted getting severed. To be honest, I hadn't until I thought more about her sitting down there in the dark. So anyway, yes, Peggy and I wrote those letters back and forth for, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. Not every day, but enough that it started to feel like, this sounds crazy, but like I found a new friend. She made me see my life in a different way. I used to think my life was boring and pretty mundane, but Peggy found all the little details I'd mentioned fascinating, even glamorous. Once I painted my nails hot pink, which is really not my style, just to see what she'd think. That night she wrote me back saying tears had sprung to her eyes. Our nails were so beautiful. Sorry, I could go on forever. Like I told you, I ramble when I get nervous, and I'm jumping out of my chair over here. No joke, housekeeping just knocked on my motel room door and I shrieked. So anyway, me and Peggy kept thinking we'd get caught, but nothing seems to come of it. Peggy grew concerned that their head of security, Mr. Dooley, an equivalent to Mr. Graven, a pale little man with a terrifying smile, was watching her more closely than usual. She described seeing him at the far end of the hall when she'd leave for the day, just standing there, smiling, like he knew what I was doing, but wanted to play with me a while before dragging me to the break room. I asked her what the break room was, but she never told me. Despite the forbidden nature of the whole interaction, this seemed to be a specific topic she was afraid to broach. Still, those code detectors never seemed to bother us or pick up the Puglish. If they had, I would have cut it off, played dumb, blame my own idiocy and never Peggy's. But it never happened. But then we get to that morning of Friday, November 3rd, which is why I'm writing to you in the first place. I come to in the elevator as usual that night and check my pockets, just like I've been doing for months. And there's another note from Peggy. And she's really excited. She finished her file, which was named Lexington. Earlier that afternoon at 2:30 p.m., she says she's been so excited to tell me about it that she could barely wait to go home, even if it meant cutting her melon bar party. Question mark, question mark, question mark. Short. She told me that the Lexington file had been extra complicated and particularly exhausting to do. This made sense to me. I'd felt tired for the last few weeks after coming to in the elevator and didn't know why. She said she'd pushed through and completed it and that everyone at Lumen, including her boss and her boss's boss, was thrilled with her work. They'd even given her an extra melon bar party to cash in later in the week. Whoopee, right? Again, I don't fully get this whole refining files thing, but a big win at work makes me look good too, so what the hell. And our whole body just felt jazzed when I came to the elevator, which wasn't a bad feeling either. I drove home and went for a jog for the first time in weeks. I felt like I could tackle the world. Later, that same night, I'm watching TV and I see you, Miss Thorne, on the news. Your face was as serious as I had ever seen it, your voice steadfast and resolute as you reported about the truck that had been blown up in New York at 2:32 p.m. that day. The Dorner Therapeutics truck. Dorner, of course, is a major competitor of my new former employer, Lumen. God, watching that footage made my heart stop. Seeing bystanders running for cover, the destroyed streets, all of it seems like hell. That's when sudden, intrusive thought dumped a hard knot right into a pit of my stomach. I looked back at my earlier note from Peggy and read again when she completed the Lexington file. The time had been 2:30 p.m., 2 minutes before the bomb went off. I was stunned. I tried to tell myself I was being paranoid, but I couldn't stop the thoughts from coming. 2 people were burned alive in a truck. 4 others were dead too. No explanation, no terrorist group claiming credit. The next day, Dorner said that some of their devices have been destroyed, their prototypes or whatever. It almost seems like this was some kind of a corporate espionage. It all seems like too much of a coincidence, doesn't it? Is that why these numbers are making the innies down there feel things? Because they're dropping bombs or blowing things up from there? What had I gotten my body and my innie, my friend, into? I barely slept that weekend. On Monday morning, I wrote Peggy another note asking her to send me any information she could about the file she just refined. Told her it was super important. She didn't know anything about the Dorner truck down there, of course, but I tried to press her more about the numbers. I asked her, what do her bosses tell her about the numbers? About Lexington in particular? What is this data they are refining? Not much, she said, other than it being very important work. Finally, I worked up the nerve to tell her about the truck. It took me over an hour to write that note. I told her I couldn't be sure there was a connection, but that the timing felt too close to ignore. I told her not to refine another number down there, no matter the consequences. Oh, that's very nice of you because you're not gonna suffer the consequences. She's gonna suffer them. You're gonna suffer them too, but you're not gonna remember them. I told her that if I was right, then Lumen has been using both of us for something insidious and horrifying. I told her none of this was her fault and that I loved her. I didn't hear back. A day passed, then 3. Every day I went down hoping to feel the familiar pressure of a note in my pants pocket as I came back up, but there was nothing. Was she mad at me, horrified by my claim, or was it something else? Was there something stopping Peggy from responding? It's a funny thing worrying about your innie. I was living each day without a scratch on me, and I was certainly still alive, which meant that physically Peggy had to be fine. But her silence every evening grew more terrifying as the days turned to weeks. I wanted to write her again, ask what was going on, but was Lumen onto us? If so, another note could spell disaster for my dear friend. One Tuesday, I emerged to find my hair wet, and not on my windshield from Lumen informed me that my innie had had a visually comedic but painless mishap with the water cooler. Yeah, she was waterboarded, probably. Most likely. She was not going for the pineapple like we have seen in the trailer. She was waterboarded. I'm 100% sure about it. I was given a gift card to Murray's all-day breakfast buffet as an apology for the inconvenience. That night, over hash browns, my mind raced. What the hell were they doing to her down there each day? How could I help? Should I resign? Since Lumen was the only place she was alive, quitting would essentially mean killing her. Surely I couldn't do that no matter how bad things had gotten. It was 2 weeks later when, upon ascending for the evening, I felt something thick and firm tucked in my back of my waistband. I struggled to show no emotions as I went to my locker, retrieved my personal items, and went out to my car. When I was safely off Lumen property, I breathlessly pulled it out and saw a faded, spiral-bound booklet with a teal cover marked the Macrodata Refiner's Orientation Booklet. A note was taped in the front, written in the King's English in my very own handwriting. So no Puglish anymore, suddenly it goes through the code detectors, so it's obviously a note that was approved by Lumen there. Duly found your last note, been in the break room, don't know how long. Think you're right about Lexington. Lumen updating code detectors, but they're down today. Hope this booklet gives clarity. Be careful, I love you too. Once again, I don't believe that the code detectors are down for today. Probably it was something that she was told to write. I opened the booklet and was startled to find an eerily chipper creature smiling up at me from the page. He looked, pardon my indelicacy, like a little dildo, with translucent skin revealing a spiral-shaped digestive tract leading down to his anus. After reading his intro, I learned that this was Sevi, a personified Severance chip and the internal mascot Lumen uses to train its innies. Describing this document is probably a fool's errand, so I'm enclosing it here for you to look at too. I've spent hours going over it, trying to decipher what the numbers might mean, as explained by the all-knowing Sevi. Maybe you can figure out more, cause to me this whole thing feels like it was written for a child. That's all you'll tell me about what all this stuff means? The only thing the handbook says about it is we know you may be curious about what the numbers mean. However, knowing the true meaning behind the numbers could inhibit your natural intuition. Well, my natural freaking intuition is telling me something horrible is happening here. After that, I didn't hear from Peggy for a week. I didn't write anything either, worried that Lumen's updated code detectors would be able to read Puglish and I'd land her back in the break room, which I could tell by now wasn't a fun place with beanbag, chairs and a pinball machine. This brings us to the last Friday morning. I sat in my car in the Lumen lot, trying to mentally prepare for my strange daily descent and wondering what horrors the day held for my dear Peggy. For some reason, I thought of that moment on the bus, skidding across the ice with the kids screaming behind me, knowing I was responsible for whatever was going to happen to those children in the coming seconds. As their screams rang in my head, I did something that contradicted my better judgment. I grabbed a fast food receipt out of my cup holder and hurriedly wrote a note in Puglish. It was a very quick note. All it said was, "Are you okay?" I went into work and descended in the elevator as usual, trying not to look nervous as I went down. When I came back, my heart was racing. My palms were sweaty, though of course I didn't know why. More troublingly, I felt a dry clump of something in my mouth. I looked at my watch, 9 and 10 a.m. Only 10 minutes had passed since I'd gone down. Trying to look casual and avoiding eye contact with the security guard, I made a beeline for my locker. There I deftly spat out the object in my mouth, which I found was a wetted up sheet of paper. Unable to wait, I opened it and read, "Peg, leave now, get somewhere safe, they will try to follow. Nothing they say is real. Distribute the training booklet. Answers are there if you look. Thank you for my life, you were the best part of it. I'll be with you always. Peggy K." And that was it. I called Mr. Alvarado and quit on the spot. I left Topeka without returning home. I only wish I could talk to Peggy again, tell her that I was going to get help for her and for all the severed people down there, and that somehow I'd get the word out about what Lumen is doing. That attack killed 6 people and I can't even begin to tell you why, even though I may have been the one or the two who pulled the trigger. But the thing that hurts me the most is the only way I could ever talk to Peggy again is to go back to Lumen to switch my Severance chip back on, and I can't do that again. Not ever. So instead, here I am, writing to you. I consider putting this up on social media, but I have about 16 friends out there, including my ex-husband, and figured you could get the word out faster than all that. I hope so anyway, for me and for Peggy. Thank you for your time, Miss Thorne. I look forward to hearing from you as soon as possible. My cell is blah blah blah, please hurry. Very sincerely, Peg Kincaid. So we have a message right now from Daria, once again to Jim. Jim is probably the head editor of the newspaper. Hey Daria, from Jim to Daria already. Read through this letter, interesting stuff, but all, as you said, pretty out there. I don't think we have the resources right now to put you on this type of story. Besides, seem more like a disgruntled employee making stuff up. Oh, shut the fuck up, man. Jim, you are a piece of shit. I called over to a source I trust implicitly at Lumen, and yeah, they obviously will confirm it for you. Yeah, of course, they gotta say, somebody who works at Lumen and says praise skier 5 times a day is definitely gonna tell you all the truth, obviously. And it sounds like she was let go because of too many absences. Let's have you focus on the high school basketball playoffs as discussed. Thanks, Jim. You sure? This is alright, Daria responding. I can still file that story and then move on to this. These allegations, if true, are pretty astonishing. Yeah, this is what you're supposed to do as a journalist. You should investigate further. Like, yeah. And then we have a message from Jim. Too late anyway, just saw this from Caroline over in Obits. Margaret Peck Kincaid, 54. Peck Kincaid passed away from complications from a car accident. What a surprise. Every time there is some kind of a car accident that somehow related to Lumen. Yes, so they probably really good at, sabotaging your car or something like this. Okay, a car accident on November 11th. She is survived by her sister, Meryl Rasmussen of Tacoma, WA, and a group of supportive and loving friends throughout the Topeka, KS area. A dedicated school bus driver for several decades, Peg enjoyed bridge, spy novels, gardening, cats, and David Niven films. She will be missed by all who knew her. A memorial service will be on November 20th at 10 a.m. In lieu of flowers, please consider a donation to the Topeka Humane Society. Tough break. Yeah, tough break. What the fuck is going on? I mean, she was sending messages that she's afraid for her life, she's worried, and then she dies. And your reaction is, okay, no story here. I mean, fuck this guy. He's obviously working for Lumen. Sorry, not to sound too harsh here, but all this might be for the best. Her whole letter felt really loose, and it's not like we want to get into a libel suit with Lumen. This is the reason, he's basically afraid. You may remember what happened with the Nashville Tribune when they printed what they thought was a well-sourced exposé on Lumen's feeding tube devices. By the way, maybe the breathing tube that we have seen with Miss Selvig, maybe it's feeding tube, not a breathing tube? What do you think about it? They got sued into oblivion and folded 6 months later. Please send me those basketball pages ASAP though, I want to run them in tomorrow's edition. So there is also the macro data refinement orientation booklet. I'm not gonna go through it today. As I told you, we're gonna focus only on the Lexington letter. The reason for it, I want to keep this information for my next video, and it's gonna be about MDR. I think we have enough information already to start building some substantial theories that are based on evidence and not only on our imagination, and this is something I'm gonna be working on in the future, in the next days. Hopefully it will take me not that much of a time. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. What do you think about Lexington letter? Did you think I was doing a good job? Probably not, with my accent and everything, but I was trying to add some information here, and I was trying to make this enjoyable experience for you. So if you enjoyed, you know what to do. Please feel free to support this channel in any shape or form that feels convenient to you. If not, it's also okay. You watch this video until this moment, and this is the biggest support you can show to the channel. I make those videos for you to watch and enjoy them. Everything else is very, very, very nice, but just a bonus. So thank you so much. I'm gonna see you on the next video. Meanwhile, bye!